It's a party at the Hollingsworth household, which means drama isn't too far behind. Hey, I'm Carrie from DegrassiBlog.com, and welcome to another edition of Degrassi Corner. And today we are talking about probably my favorite overall episode of Degrassi Next Class Season 3, hashtag huge if true. Now this is also a history-making episode, if I remember correctly. Not only is this probably the only episode in Degrassi history where Degrassi, the school itself, doesn't make an appearance in the episode, this is also the first episode in Degrassi history where the entire episode takes place at someone's house. It's supposed to be a girls' night for Frankie, Shay, and Lola. However, the former, they invite their boyfriends, Jonah and Tiny, over, and we also see Zig, Esme, and Grace tag along as well. Now, within this girls' night storyline, we have three subplots. It's basically Frankie, Shay, and Lola all have their own little individual subplot, and all of these subplots revolve around sex in some way. In Frankie's case, she's ready to have sex with Jonah, but Jonah doesn't want to have sex with her. I mean, they're right there in the moment, getting hot and heavy, and he stops her, and that really upsets Frankie, and she feels like he doesn't really want her. So she asks him to give her some space. This plot is very similar to the season 14 storyline involving Allie and Dallas, where we saw Dallas get really upset because Allie didn't want to have sex with him. He brought up the fact that she had slept with guys in the past, and he felt like she didn't want to sleep with him because she didn't really love him. But Allie was like, no, you idiot. The reason why I don't want to have sex with you is because sex is very complicated for me. And it's complicated a lot of my past relationships. And I really want to have a future with you, so I don't want to bring sex into that. And Jonah essentially says the same thing here to Frankie. He says he used to be a bad guy in the past, do a lot of bad things, and he would have sex during that time. And he doesn't want to ruin the relationship he has with Frankie by bringing sex into the equation. However, as we've seen with Frankie in season 3, she's not really all that mature when it comes to romantic relationships, and she's not really listening to what Jonah is actually saying. All she hears is that Jonah doesn't want to have sex with her, so he must not want to be with her. As we go through season 3, we're seeing this gap in the maturity levels between Jonah and Frankie widen. So janky, they might look cute together, but at this point in the season, we're just wondering why they're even together. Shay, on the other hand, she wants absolutely nothing to do with sex. During a game of Never Have I Ever, they say, take a drink if you want to hook up with the person on your right, and Tiny, he takes a drink and Shay is to his right. And that leaves Shay feeling kind of weird. Also, Esme, she's there stirring up trouble, and she has Tiny and Lola go into a closet to play 7 Minutes in Heaven, and they don't actually hook up or anything. However, Shay thinks that they might have kissed even though they didn't, and that just upsets everyone. And Shay's also upset because she found out that Tiny wants to hook up with her. And then Tiny gets upset because he feels there's nothing wrong for a guy wanting to hook up with his girlfriend, and it just turns into a complete mess. Real talk here, it's completely fine that Shay doesn't want to have sex. However, her attitude towards sex in general and how it applies to basically everyone else in the world, it's basically caused her to create this idealistic version of Tiny in her head. Let me remind you that Tiny has never once pressured Shay or even talked to her about sex. She had it in her head that Tiny's this perfect guy who never ever thinks about sex, and that's just a completely unrealistic thing to believe. So she's completely thrown for a loop, and now that she learns Tiny does think about sex and wants to hook up with her, she all of a sudden believes that he's just going to start suddenly pressuring her into sex. The issue with Shay's mentality about sex is that it's all or nothing. You're either not thinking about sex at all, or you're thinking about it, which means you're basically a sex maniac. And as we know, that's ridiculous. When it comes to sex and how people feel about it and think about it, it completely depends on the person. But something great here is we're seeing a character on Degrassi who is basically turned off by sex. And it would be really interesting if later on down the road in a future season or something, we saw a story about a character, possibly Shay, being asexual. Like, she might be fine with hugging and kissing Tiny, but at the same time, she also has zero desire to have sex with him. And then Lola is upset because girls' night is ruined. She gets into another argument with Shay over the whole Tiny situation, and then her and Tiny actually end up going into a closet to play 7 Minutes in Heaven, and they don't hook up or anything, but they do have a really interesting conversation. Lola talks about the fact that she always feels like she is everyone's second choice, and Tiny tells her that she is a great girl and that there is at least one guy out there who will appreciate her for who she is. So then once they leave the closet, they get into a confrontation with Shay. Basically, Shay accuses them of hooking up or something. Lola, she's upset, so she goes off, and she actually spends the rest of the night hanging out with Miles working on the play. They end up getting really close, they end up kissing, and they actually have sex, and they both know that they can't be in a real relationship, so they both agree to just enjoy whatever this thing that they have is. Degrassi did a really good job building chemistry between Miles and Lola, not only throughout this entire season, but especially in this scene right here where we see them on Miles' bed, and then they're working on the play, and then we see them getting closer and closer, and just the tension is there and you can feel it, and it feels wrong, but at the same time, just a really good job from the Degrassi team building that chemistry that makes me feel so conflicted about these two. I don't condone these two cheating at all. However, I do appreciate, from a storytelling perspective, Degrassi's ability to create a very genuine emotional connection between Miles and Lola. Now on to the dick measuring contest with Hunter, Vijay, and Baaz. Yes, these three decided they were going to measure their junk to see who was the bigger man. However, Yael crashes the party, and when she asks them what they're doing, they lie. Actually, Baaz lies and says that they were planning on watching porn. And because Yael isn't really your typical type of girl, she's not fazed by dicks and porn and all that stuff, she's like, yo, fire it up, let's go. So the guys are sitting there awkwardly watching porn with Yael, and then they finally confess that they were going to measure their dicks. And again, because she's not fazed by anything, Yael's like, well, I'll measure, I'll keep tabs, I'll tabulate the results. And then we have Hunter freaking out because him and Yael, they haven't even done anything sexually yet. So it's going to be weird that she's going to see his junk before they've done any of that. And then Baaz ends up yelling at Hunter, telling him that he's rich and he has a girlfriend, and he takes all of that for granted. And that's because earlier in this episode, one of the things that we saw at the very beginning of this plot was Vijay and Baaz going through Hunter's closet, and he has this closet full of these really nice clothes that he never wears. Just like we've seen with Frankie on Degrassi, Hunter, just these Hollingsworth kids, they have no clue what a privileged life they live. And there's also conflict between Hunter and Yael, because in the first place, these two, they initially had plans, and then Hunter canceled them. He lied and said that he was sick in order to hang out with Baaz and Vijay. But in the end, Hunter wins the dick contest. However, he knows that Baaz is jealous, so he's like, well, I don't want to hurt his feelings some more. I mean, he's already jealous of me, so we'll just give him this one win. But the big thing about this storyline is the fact that everybody's concerns, Baaz, Vijay's, and Yael's concerns that we saw in Season 2 of Degrassi Next Class about Hunter and Yael's relationship just getting in the way of everything, we're seeing all those concerns actually coming true. Not only do Baaz and Vijay feel like Hunter has been ditching them more often to hang out with Yael, but Yael also feels like she's becoming an outsider to their group, especially when Hunter lied to her in order to hang out with Baaz and Vijay alone. So we're seeing this really interesting dynamic where this friendship group is starting to unravel, all because Hunter and Yael started dating. And that's going to do it for this episode of Degrassi Corner. Make sure you leave all your comments and opinions about this episode and all of Degrassi Next Class Season 3 in the comment section below. Also make sure you like, favorite, and subscribe. Can't wait to do the next episode review of Degrassi Next Class Season 3.